Hello everyone and welcome back to another Luminar NEO tutorial. In today's video, we're gonna be creating spooky Halloween portrait image and we're gonna get inspired by the brand new Beetlejuice 2 movie. Now we're gonna be using a number of creative tools including the studio light and color transfer, where we're gonna use the actual images from the movie to borrow the colors and luminosity. So, if you're ready, we are starting right now. Okay, so let's move into Luminar NEO, where we're gonna start in the catalog module. The first thing we're gonna look at are the sample files. Now, a quick reminder that if you wanna follow me along and do the edit on your own computer, jump into the description of this video, follow the link there, and download the sample files now. Once you have them ready, import them into the application and we can start. So coming back to our main sample file or the image, it's right here. And when I make it a little bit bigger, let's look at it. So it's quite nice capture with a lady in a costume, the pumpkin, as well as the lantern. But in overall, it doesn't really have much character or atmosphere. It has a nice light, but there is so much more we can do with it. So we're gonna use a few different tools. I have some overlays, textures, and also images that we're gonna use for the color transfer. And if everything goes well, we should end up with a result like this. So if you're ready, let's select the main sample file and move it into the edit module. Once we get there, we have a few things we want to start with. Now, creating a Moody scene, I'm not a massive fan of the red color, so we're gonna take care of that. And on the top of it, we will want to add a little bit more effect or glow to this lantern. But first come first, let's take care of the color. Now, there are multiple different ways we can do this, but most of them are done in the color tool. So for this, we need to go into the main editing toolbar, the essentials section, and the color tool is right here. Now we're gonna open it, and from here we're also gonna open the HSL panel. Let's make it nice and visible. And when it comes to adjusting colors, we can use the HSL panel here. And when it comes to saturation, we're gonna click on the drop-down box and select the saturation here. Now looking at it, we have a number of options here. We can adjust saturation for red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, and magenta colors. So in our case, it's kind of red/magenta, I think. So let's go ahead and take the red slider and bring it down. Now that does quite well, but you can see that there is still a little bit of color there. So as I mentioned, it wasn't a pure red. So what we need to do, we need to also adjust the magenta, bring it down and see if that will do. And that's pretty much it. However, when we zoom in on this area, there is still a little bit of something which could be either purple. So if I adjust it, it doesn't do anything, or it could be orange. So if we bring the orange down, that will do the job. Now, obviously, by adjusting colors like red and orange, it also has an impact on the color scheme and rest of the photo. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use masking. We will only use this specific adjustment on a specific part of the photo. So let's go into the masking while we're still in the color tool, and we're gonna open the brush, and in the brush we're gonna stay on paint. With the paint, we will paint the areas where we wanna add this effect or this edit. So let's zoom in, let's focus on this area of the dress first, and we can start from the bottom. Now, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna adjust our brush size. I think somewhere around here is fine. We can start with the softness on 100, and with the strength, well, let's stay on 102. Now, let's go ahead and make one click, so one brush stroke. Once we do that, you will notice that all the colors will return. And the effect of that almost unsaturation will only apply wherever we're going to brush. So let's make our brush a little bit smaller using the bracket keys on our keyboard. And now slowly go through these areas and paint over them to remove the color. Depending on how long you want to take, you can take as much as you want, or you can, just like me, do it quite fast. So let's go ahead and remove these areas. That is all good. Now, while you have a brush selected, you need to hold the space bar on your keyboard to be able to move around. So anytime I move around like this, I hold space bar and basically I just drag around. Now you can use the bracket keys to make the brush a little bit bigger for that bigger parts of the costume. And again, you can make it a little bit smaller and even zoom in a little bit closer and continue brushing. If there is an area where you can make straight brush strokes, just make one click on one side, then hold shift and make click on the other side. And once you do that, it will basically create a line between the two brush strokes. Again, one click here, another click here, and that's about it. So this looks good. Then we're gonna remove this part and we are almost there. We're just gonna have to take care of the upper part. So for that, again, we're gonna zoom in even closer. One click here, shift, another click on the other side. Hold the space bar to move around. Again, adjustment here, one click here, shift, and quick line between the two different brush strokes. And I think that we are almost finished with this. Now, this is not the biggest editing on the world, but really just to remove any distraction from the overall atmosphere. I think the red was just a little bit too much, so I prefer to remove it. So that looks good. We just have the top of the hat here. Let's just quickly zoom in there and similarly just use our brush to remove it. Go for that, perfect. And once we do that, double check the result, zoom out using Command or Control minus or Command 0 to fit the image into the screen, and that's it. Just a quick way to remove the red color. Next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna add a glow to our candle. Now, as you've seen earlier in our sample files, we have an overlay with a glow in it. So let's go ahead and move into our layers panel where we're gonna click on the plus sign. And in the next window, we're gonna click on load image. Now we're gonna navigate into the location of the sample files, open it, and here simply select the glow overlay. After that, click on open and it will be automatically added into our layers. Since we're already here, let's also click on load image one more time and add the texture. However, we will use the texture a little bit later. So let's select the glow overlay, click on it and add it to the image. Once it appears, you can see it on our layers panel and you can see that as it is on the top, it is on top of our original image. Now we can use the little white dots to adjust its size and we can also drag it around to adjust the position. If we want, we can also rotate it, but I think for us, we're gonna leave it this way. Let's make it just a little bit smaller, position it over the candle, and that's about it. Now, once we have the layer still selected, we're gonna go into our editing toolbar and focus on the layer properties. First thing we're gonna do is to increase the opacity all the way to 100. And you notice that our overlay became pretty much non-transparent, but it has this black background. So what to do? Well, what to do? We're gonna adjust the blend mode from normal into the screen. And by doing that, that will remove all the black color. Now we can see the effect again, and we can again position it over the candle to get that special glow. If you want, you can make it a little bit bigger. However, I think for me, somewhere around here is good. Again, once you're happy, that's pretty much that done for this part of the edit. So let's go back to the layers panel where again, we're gonna select the original image, the layer at the bottom, and we're gonna focus on the next task, which in this case is to make the overall image darker and create interesting light. The idea is that most of the image is lit by the lantern. So the easiest way to do this is to actually go to the bottom of our editing toolbar where there is the portrait section and there is a tool called Studio Light. So let's click on it to open it. Again, make it nice and visible. And the first thing we need to do with the Studio Light is to increase the amount. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, when you do that, the application will scan the image, prepare a mask for the portrait, and create a new source of light. Now, the light will be indicated with this white dot on the image. When you hover over it, your mouse will turn into this little hand, which will then allow you to adjust the position of the light. So we can basically move it around. And by doing that, as you can see, if I position it closer to the lantern, also the direction of the light changes. So it looks like the light is coming from this side. However, the whole image is still way too bright. So let's go back to our studio light and we're gonna go on the top. Here we have controllers like brightness, smoothness, and local contrast. So to make it more interesting, we're gonna make the overall image a little bit darker by bringing the brightness slider down. Now, how much of the brightness you're gonna lower is up to you. However, I quite like to adjust a lot of it to create really nice contrast here. Additionally, we can also use the light contrast, and you will notice that with this slider, you will really start to see the difference and you will really start to see the effect of the new light. So now coming back to our image, when I take the dot and start to adjust it, you will really see the effect of the new light. So I think somewhere around here looks good because this way it looks like the lantern is actually illuminating the pumpkin as well as this part of the face and body. Coming back one more time into the studio light, we can adjust the hue and saturation of the light. So let's say that we can increase the saturation and then just add a little bit of warmth following the same color of the lantern. Now the easiest way to adjust this is to actually increase the saturation a lot and then go into the hue and adjust it to our liking. So I think that probably somewhere around 32 looks good. So let's take the saturation and bring it down. Let's say here. If you think that there could be more of the light, you can still increase the amount, but I think for me, somewhere around 20 or 25 looks good. Now that's it pretty much for the studio light effect, but you can still go through different adjustments and see if that does anything for you. For us, we are finished, so we're gonna close it and continue. Now looking at the image and seeing it after we made the adjustments with the studio light, you can notice that the lantern effect or the overlay now has this extra glow around it. You can clearly notice the hard edges as well as the different color. So we need to adjust this. So let's go back to our layers panel, select the overlay with the glow on it, and again back to our layer properties. The easiest way to adjust this is to go into the masking, where we're gonna again use the brush, and this time we're gonna adjust the size and make it quite nice and big, keep the softness on 100 and bring the strength down to around 50. Now we could start to paint, however there is one more thing we need to do, and that's to switch to erase. We're gonna be erasing the part of the element. So once we're done, we can now start to brush away the hard edges. Again, use the bracket keys to adjust the size if you think that it's a little bit too strong. And again, brush over the hard edges, keep an eye on the image, and make sure that you're happy with the final result. Generally, it doesn't take too long. Somewhere around here should be fine. Let's have a look. Keep an eye on everything. You can always zoom in a little bit closer if you think it still needs a little bit more. Also, don't forget that you can use the undo and redo function and see if that helps in any way. However, again, for me, somewhere around here is fine. Now to double check, let's just zoom out, have a look at it. Maybe we need to brush a little bit here, away and here, and that's about it. Once we finish, we can close the layer properties and we are done with this part of the edit. Now the next thing we need to do is to blend the two layers together so we can apply more global adjustments. And since we don't have a merge option here, what we need to do is to export the image in the highest possible quality, then bring it back into Luminar NEO and continue. So let's do that. Let's right click on the image and select export. In the exporting window, you need to select the location, which in my case will be the location of the sample files. So let's do that. Let's adjust the name. Let's call it Mid Edit. And when it comes to the settings for the export, sharpening on none original on resize, sRGB. Now I usually go for the TIFF format as it is the highest possible quality, 300 pixels on inch, compression, you can use it or not. I like to use the LZW to save a little bit of space, and then the depth I go for the 16 bits. Uncheck the save transparency and simply click on save. Now the application will export the image, and once it's ready, when we go back to the catalog module, you will notice that it's already here. Okay, so we're gonna select it and again move it into edit module. Looking at our layers panel, you can now see that even the glow is included in the layers panel. Now at this point, it's time to be a little bit creative and add a little bit of the cinematic effect to the image. So, since we're creating a Halloween scene, let's go into our main editing toolbar and start in the creative section. First, we're gonna apply is a little bit of a dramatic look. So, let's open the dramatic tool, and here it's as simple as taking the amount slider and increase it. We don't wanna overdo it, that looks way too much, but for me, I think somewhere around 20 starts to look good. Let's close it and continue. Next, we're gonna go into the mystical tool, which is probably one of my favorite tools in the application because it really creates beautiful fantasy effect. When I increase it, you will notice that it adds glow, smooth everything together, and actually helps with the overall blending. Now, we don't want that much of it. Let's say just somewhere around 30 will do, but it's another good step. Now, additionally, if you do want to go with the cinematic look, you can apply a little bit of the matte effect, adding a fade to the overall image. And of course that you can add a little bit of film grain by simply opening the film grain tool and adding just a little bit, maybe somewhere around 5. With that being done, now it's time to color grade the image. And yes, you guessed it, this is the time where we're gonna use our Beetlejuice images. So let's jump into the color transfer tool, and here click on the reference selection. In the library, we're gonna simply click on the plus sign, and one more time navigate into the sample files folder. Here select the reference photos, open the folder, and start by clicking on the first photo and click on open. Again, click on the same drop-down box and click on plus, and open the second image as well. Select it and simply click on open. Once we add both of the images, we can now choose between and see what we like the most. You can use the green, or you can also go for the blue. Looking at it, I actually prefer the blue, so let's select it and let's go ahead and adjust the different options here. So by default, the amount is on 60. We can bring it down or we can make it really strong. But actually, I think the 60 works very well. After that, we can adjust the color intensity. We can bring it down or push it up, but I think just somewhere around, let's say 70 works well because it applies the color more into the shadow and texture and also a little bit of rest of the image, but it still gives us a little bit of that skin tone. Let's have a look at it, maybe somewhere around 75. You will see that at some point it just starts to remove the skin tones. So looking at it, yeah, around 75 looks good. After that, we can also adjust the luminosity. So let's take the slider and bring it down and see what it does. And actually, I think it does quite a good job by creating a little bit of a vignette, adding a little bit more contrast. So let's keep it on 100. Finally, we can adjust the transition smoothing if we want to, but actually for this image, I think the 75 works quite well. And when it comes to color smoothing, keep an eye on the texture and everything and see what you like. I think for me, around 50 works very well. So that's about that. We can now quickly have a look at the before with this color transfer tool and after. And once we're happy, we can close it and apply it to the image. So what we have done, we have applied some global adjustments, we have color graded the image, and just to finish it off, let's go back on the top where we're gonna apply some nice vignette. To do that, let's click on the vignette tool and very easily adjust the amount slider down until you like the amount of the vignette you seeing. Additionally, what we can do, we can click on the choose subject And now basically adjust the center of the vignette. So I would make it a little bit closer to the lantern to make it again look more like the lantern is actually illuminating the image. Once we finish, there is only one thing we can do, and that's to apply a little bit of a texture to the image to get even more depth. Now to do that, back to Layers panel, again plus sign, and we already have the texture here. Click on it to apply it. And once it appears, let's go to Layer Properties, where we're gonna increase the opacity to 100, and then adjust our blend mode from normal into the overlay or soft light. For me, the soft light works quite well, and once we adjust it, all we need to do is to adjust our opacity just to get the result we are looking for. So I think, for me, somewhere around 55 works quite well. So that's about it. And just before we finish, let's go back to the catalog module, where we can look at the original image and then the final edit. Now, before we going to finish, I want to quickly remind you that this tutorial was powered by our Luminar NEO Halloween bundle. The Halloween bundle is part of our Luminar NEO Autumn bundle, and both together they include over 721 new Autumn and Halloween elements. Get it today and get special Halloween and Autumn presets, LUTs, skies, overlays, textures, backgrounds, frames, and working layers to transform your Autumn and Halloween images with just a few clicks. Now, if you want to find more about this Halloween bundle, head to our website cleverphotographer.com, and to get the best possible price, use the link in the description of this video. And just like that, we have finished with today's tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please make sure that you give it a like, and if you have any questions about today's topic or Luminar NEO, then write them into the comment section under this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future content. For today, my name was Jacob Bors, and I can't already wait to see you in our future videos.